Welcome to Squawkulitis! Alright, we're going to be talking about Ben 10 today. He's got like 60 aliens by the end of the show, but only 8 games that are actually worth talking about. And I'm going to specifically talking about the 3D counterpart games. None of the 2D games are really interesting for the sake of this video's topic. Also, we would be here for 8 years if I talked about literally every Ben 10 game. So we're talking about 3D ones only. And if we're talking about that category, there's one game that has been unsurpassed ever since, and it is the very first one. I mean, yeah, graphically and content-wise, and in terms of like stuff like the alien roster, and on a technical level, I would say Vilgax Attacks onwards surpasses Protector of Earth, the first Ben 10 game. However, in terms of actual fun as a game and expanding upon potential, the first game holds the most. It is snappy, it is fun and enjoyable. And I feel like something that is wrong with the Ben 10 games after Protector of Earth is they almost never try to expand upon or explore that potential. They just kind of change things and see if it sticks. Each game is like a telephone game with the prior. Like, from Protector of Earth to Cosmic Destruction, it's almost a completely different experience. But you can see every step of the way why they change things to be like that. I would say no game after PoE has the same level of responsive, punchy combat. This game is snappy, it's heavy, it feels good to hit shit. It's fluid to go in and out of combos and aim attacks and prepare things and manage energy. Seeing everything explode or collapse instantly is so rewarding and just... it's fun. It's pure fun. Is it the best game of all time? No. Are the other Ben 10 games bad? No, but they don't capture that experience. Now let's talk about the mechanics and explain why this first game is so much more engaging on a near objective level than some of the rest of the series. And it kind of boils down to 2 fundamental mechanics that make this first Ben 10 game unlike almost every other beat-em-up action adventure game. And this is something that the devs after this first game failed to capture. The 2 things I'm talking about are the Omniverse energy limiter and the combos and how they interlock with character progression. In Protector of Earth, unlike the original show, your transformations aren't time-based, but instead based on energy consumption. Ironically enough, this is actually how Alien Force in this show handles energy. Doing basically nothing allows you to stay a transformation for almost however long you want. However, doing your big, strong, flashy combos takes energy off of that time. So in other words, the more stuff you do, the more energy you use, less time you have as alien. When reverting to Ben, you're vulnerable, and if you die as Ben, it's game over. And if an alien dies in combat, you're just reverted to Ben with 0 energy and you have to recharge. During that recharge time, the sense of surprisingly engaging, like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, I gotta run from the bad guys, is kind of shocking. Like, you don't think it's going to be that until you're playing it and you're just spamming the dodge roll button to try and get out of the way of attacks. This makes this interesting relationship with energy and Ben. On one hand, your best moves use the most energy, but on the other hand, if you know what you need to use for this specific combat scenario, you don't need to use that best move. It kind of creates this weird thing where as you play the game, you unlock stronger combos, but those stronger combos either are weaker but take less energy, or stronger and easier to use but take more energy. The move Critical Meltdown is one of the best examples of this late game for Heat Blast. It's literally just this burst AoE attack by pressing special twice, but it takes like half your energy to do it. So now you have this easy access near board wipe, but you don't need it for most combat scenarios. You need that when you're surrounded by a ton of crystal bears and you gotta wipe them all out at one time. That is what's cool about this energy system, is now, even if you get stronger, there's still your older, interesting, weaker moves to temper with and use in scenarios where they're worth it and needed. Every new alien is just a new series of options for approaching your various groups of enemies, and because Ben is so much more vulnerable to death and just taking damage in general, for a 7 to 10-year-old playing this game blind for the first time, that intensity is legitimately real on hero mode. I think for a kid, the difficulty of this game holds really well. Even at that age, which I was the target demographic roughly when this game came out, I did have to learn to do more than just button mash to get towards the end of this game. And combos are what this is all really based on. The actual input for these moves stay the same between each alien, like triangle, triangle special is going to do something with all completed aliens. However, the archetypal purpose of that move completely changes with each alien. Genuinely, they kind of have a general role where it's like, typically special twice is just the most extreme representation of the character. Once again, Heat Blast does its Critical Meltdown, Forearms does this like tombstone punch where you throws an enemy to a wall. Accelerating Cannonball kind of bounce around between every enemy on the field to get rid of them really fast. Wildvine throws grenades into the air and they splatter around destroying things. It's just kind of this like big flashy display of the character. This choice of unlocking new things at one move at a time kind of creates this like wrapped present dynamic of holy cow, gee willikers, I can now become a heckin' tornado. And knowing that what comes next on a subsequent playthrough allows you to match your playstyle to it early, because you're like, oh, I got a power level heat blast so I can get that cool little flyer crescent move. Each alien's moves enough are simple enough input-wise where a dumb kid hitting random buttons could still occasionally get cool shit to happen, but it incentivizes you actually knowing what those buttons do so you can get the most out of them. And when you master this game, it is one of the most fluid and just, in simple terms, fun beat-em-up. I'm not going to pretend it's like the most engaging piece of media ever, but in terms of just holding the interest and having a little bit more than just watch the buttons and colors fly, I think it's a great game in that regard. Now, let's go to the first step of Descent into Hell. Alien Force is fine. It's lacking diversity in alien moves, because its definition of adding new combos is just adding another button to the main string. It's just not as good or satisfying in general. The models don't look as stylized as Protector of Earth, and they don't look as clean as later games would look. And this is on the same console as Protector of Earth, so it doesn't even have that excuse. Everything just looks more stiff and less fluid, and it plays more stiff and plays less fluid, so it's like, okay, so the actual animations aren't as good, and the actual gameplay isn't as good, and just the diversity of everything is just a little less. There's some new stuff like Kevin and Gwen are in the game, and that's cool, but they're kind of just more boring characters. They almost could just be transformations on the transformation wheel, because they aren't really any more interesting than any individual Ben 10 alien, which I think if you're going to make it so you're only playing this character, they should be interesting enough to replicate playing as Ben, or make you want to play a level as them, not just be like, oh, okay, I'm playing the section where I'm Kevin and Gwen now. What's weird is, even though Ben can now canonically in the show switch from one alien to another, unlike Protector of Earth, which halfway through the game you get a mechanic called Hero Control, which allows you to switch from one form directly to another, Alien Force never unlocks this feature. In fact, Vilgax Attacks doesn't have this either. It's just kind of hard to explain why Alien Force is inferior. You just kind of have to play it. There's some cool ideas, like there seems to be the subtle elemental damage mechanic where some enemies are weaker to some damage types. Like, I think any of the hybrid-based aliens, especially the DNA aliens, are fire susceptible, so Swamp Fire is better against them. And I think some of the enemies are, like, cold weak. Let's move on to a game that's a little bit more interesting in terms of how it changes things moving forward. Because gameplay-wise, Alien Force is just kind of Protector of Earth 2, but worse, with some weird random changes. Vilgax Attack fundamentally changes the formula and tone of the game moving forward. This is the first game to actually have 10 aliens. Go fuck yourself, Hyperscan. And it shows that you can kind of both have a big roster and have a decent move pool. That said, each character's move pool is nowhere near as deep as Protector of Earth. But more importantly, Vilgax Attacks was the first step away from the beat-em-up and step forward towards this more action-adventure-y game. And this fundamental change to how they handled things slowed down the gameplay. The camera is now less of a fixed, over-the-top, like, wow, look at the action go, and is now changed and follows Ben as a more traditional game. That change doesn't hinder anything, but it sets a precedent for the change in what they were trying to do. The biggest casualty of Vilgax Attacks, however, is the death of the energy system as it was. Now the energy system is basically a stamina meter. You can't overdraw on your aliens anymore. In Protector of Earth, it didn't matter how much energy you had left when you were going to be reverting or using a big move. If you were going to overdraw, you were going to overdraw. This meant that even if you had like 2% of your energy left, you could use a 50% energy move with no consequence, because I mean, you're going to overdraw anyway. This meant you could kind of throw in this Hail Mary whenever you want, where it's like, well, I normally wouldn't use this move because it takes so much energy, but if I'm going to revert anyway, I'm going to do something big while I go down. And you don't have that anymore with this energy system. The fact that energy regenerates, period, and the fact that it just stops you from using moves just kind of means you wait for that energy to come back. And also, since you can't revert to Ben, they changed it so if you die as an alien, you die, period. This slows down gameplay so much. They kind of tried to counterbalance this by making it so you gain energy back as Ben, but they also made this dumb as hell change where whenever you want to turn into an alien, Ben has to turn and stop and hit the Omnitrix, which means you can't fluidly switch in and out of being Ben and an alien to have this whole counterbalance of I'll be vulnerable for a second so I can get my energy up to a big combo as my alien, because it stops you in your tracks to change into an alien. This really does mean your best option is just to run around and do basic attacks until your energy casually fills back up. It's just strange, because there's no reason to change it like this. There's no reason to do this. Unless you thought that changing back to Ben was a genuine problem and didn't understand why that was such a cool, balanced feature. Which leads me to believe that the Alien Force team just genuinely didn't understand Protector of Earth's energy. The visuals are cool, it's great that 10 aliens are all in here, and it's frustrating that everything's still too stiff. It's nowhere near as fluid and fun as Protector of Earth. It isn't a bad video game, but as a sequel, it trades almost every advantage and improvement it could have made just to be a little slower and duller for the sake of being more normal. And this just kind of gets more extreme with Cosmic Destruction. I would argue that as a series building on itself, Cosmic Destruction is where everything gets screwed up. The game visually is great. It has a pretty good story, but they screwed everything about combat up. Ladies and gentlemen, forget skill-based combos. Hold the trigger and press a button. Watch Dragon Turtle Man shoot missiles, but only in this level. Screw scrolling through your aliens. Use the other trigger and stick at the same time to select one of your 4 aliens at a time. Want any more aliens? Slowly move through this pause screen menu thing. This uses more buttons. It has a small loading screen every time you select an alien for some reason. And also this game uses the same stupid near infinite energy system, which makes it even more baffling. And the new alien selecting thing is strange because, yeah, having a full 10 aliens is slower to scroll through all of them than before. But why not just have the original scroll system and a D-pad? Or have, the goddamn Mass Effect style wheel that the later games would sort of have with Power Trip. This system forces me to stop and wait to select my aliens, rather than just it was at least fun to be able to move Ben around so it didn't feel like you were being held back when you were selecting through your prior aliens before. At a higher level of gameplay, I could switch between my aliens on the fly while moving. And now, while it did make it easier to switch between 4 aliens at a time, that's still less than just making it easier to scroll through aliens or giving me a favorites menu with the D-pad. Using trigger and a stick is dumb as hell. That takes more buttons than it used to. It's rather than try to make the hard stuff more accessible, they brought down the skill gap to make it easier. And that's not how you expand upon things. And once again, all the stupid, slow, adventuring nonsense is here. They did add one interesting mechanic that could have been cool, which is this parry mechanic where if you block in time with an enemy with their flashing icon, you can hit them back. I mean, that's neat. I don't know why we had to make it so every alien only gets 4 fucking special moves. Even Alien Force surpassed this. And the fact that it's a trigger button now instead of just Vilgax Attacks, which, also used the trigger, but it at least was more like the prior game. But now what it just leads to is this nonsense where you're just holding the trigger and watching everything happen. I was praising Protector of Earth for making it so that even a kid could figure out these, admittedly, a little simple combos. And on accident still do cool things and be rewarded when they look into how they did those cool things. Now, it's obvious how you do them, and there's no reason to not do them. There's no balance to this other than uses energy, at which point you just kind of slowly do normal attacks until you get the chance to. There's no thought to this. You don't plan how you would do an encounter or a fight. Every fight has the core same solution, which is, use my specials. When I'm out of the specials, do normal attacks and parry until I have the energy to do the specials. Rinse, repeat. It's hard to explain, but Protector of Earth, even with its inferior puzzles at a certain point, I'd still rather play at almost every turn. If this was the only Ben 10 game, I don't think it would be a mark on the franchise or a bastardization of the characters. But as a sequel in a line of games with better prior established games, it's so confusing. Every step they've made to fix a prior problem they introduced is just slightly better than it was before, but not as good as in the original game. Tell me these were an improvement. You can feel the difference in these attacks in your soul. Omniverse is like the Pet Cemetery resurrected version of Protector of Earth. Energy is back, but it's this weird 4-at-a-time transformation system again. At least thank God it's mapped to the D-pad, rather than trigger plus camera stick. But it's just slightly off. Specials are still basically just hold trigger, press button, watch the diamonds fly, or whatever your current attack character is. And combos are just too simple again. Look at a completed character in Omniverse. Specials, which keep in mind are literally 2 buttons, are just too strong. Some of the most basic but reliable moves of Protector of Earth are stuff like Light Triangle, Light Special, Aerial Special. Like, those aren't crazy, but they require specific context and awareness of where you are in the stage and how to aim and hit things with them. Omniverse does this thing where a lot of the moves are locked onto things, and a lot of your best moves are just, they work in all conditions. Part of my problem I had with Cosmic Destruction. In Cosmic Destruction's combat loop, there's never a reason to use anything other than the basic combat loop. You might as well just be one alien the entire game. And while you can do that in Protector of Earth, it's not as fun. It is more interesting to play your mix of aliens. And yet, yeah, it is more interesting to play the mix of aliens and Cosmic Destruction, but it's just kind of because you get bored of the form, not because you want to explore a new form in particular. And Omniverse is like a half step between these where it's like, yeah, I would rather switch forms, but also I'm never given a reason not to just be Diamond Head, especially since Kid and Teen Ben both have him, and the upgrades carry over between the two. You can just play Diamond Head for like every encounter in the game until you need to do a puzzle with an alien, at which point you can just revert back. And right when combos start getting added up and start really building up to be like, yeah, we're starting to get here. We're starting to get interesting again. And it's just like, that's it. That's the roster. You max out the character. Bye-bye. Try a new one. Right when things start getting fluid and good, they start stopping in Omniverse. And while Protector of Earth reused a lot of move ideas between forms, which I think was just a development limitation, Omniverse just kind of has stuff like, Special plus B will always be a projectile. Heavy air slams into the ground. And it's like almost every form has their version of this. And then there's like random puzzles in quotation marks. I think the most annoying one to me is the grappling segment. What is the point of this? You press a button, your character does the thing, you move on to the next platform. It takes no energy. It switches you right back to whatever you were prior. You don't even have to switch to Wildvine, or whoever your form is. And I'm not even saying that Protector of Earth had better puzzles than this, but like, you had to do something in Protector of Earth. And reverting back to Ben took a little bit of energy in Protector of Earth, which was a weird gameplay decision. But it did that, and that meant you were incentivized to stay as that alien from the next area, or stay transformed at least. I'm just confused. Like, why are stuff like this here?
Alright, so originally here, I was a little bit more negative and very nitpicky in this next section. So I just gotta cut that out and gotta say that when you finally have 4 or so completed characters that you can switch in and out of, while their quirks are a little bit more limited and there are a lot of repetitive ideas, there is still a lot of fun to be had. I do think this is the second best Ben 10 game overall, but I still prefer Protector of Earth. That said, Omniverse brings some things to the table. It has that giant alien roster. And I would say the move pool is decent. I kind of downplayed it originally earlier, but I feel like when it gets going, it's pretty serviceable. It's missing some things. There's no aerial specials. You can't end attacks with specials, really. You kind of have to just mix them in whenever you want, which is just kind of a limitation of how they designed the special system. Other than that, I think they're pretty good. I think they're serviceable. I think, like I said, this is the second best Ben 10 game overall. And the graphics hold up really well. I think this game looks great.
Omniverse 2 really could have brought the series back once again. In fact, it was made by the original dev team High Voltage, who made Protector of Earth. I don't really know the exact specifics of how these games were developed, but point is, they were on team. And the snappiness for a lot of these attacks is back, but oh god, what the fuck? Yeah, the Temple Run shit isn't the worst gameplay decision ever made, but this feels like it should have been an experimental 3DS exclusive or mobile game. Its presence in a mainline 2-console sequel, like especially going directly off and titling itself Omniverse 2, is so random, and the combos are even more shallow, and it's even more jarring because now we only have 3 forms at a time. What's the point of the D-pad system if we're going to limit ourselves more? And it can't even be 3 of your favorite aliens. It has to be a light, medium, and heavy alien for the sake of the temple run segment. But like, why couldn't we have an individual alien selection thing and the D-pad? I've never understood why these things are segmented off from each other. You either have the first 3 games where you just select one alien at a time by scrolling through the whole list, or you have to use the D-pad to do everything. And I am like, why? What the hell? How did we regress with better software? Why is the difficulty kind of too hard, but not really? Because it's not like it's harder per se in terms of what you have to do is more difficult. It's just that there's more shit. Like, they just kind of keep throwing more at you. And it's like, the inputs of what I'm doing aren't getting more complicated, really. It's just like, more aliens to fight. Oh, I gotta deal with this bunch of incursions. Here I go. And once again, I think a lot of the core roots of this game are really interesting. Like, if they expanded upon the combo system and made the impacts really cool, it would have been great. The energy system fucking sucks, kinda, though, because they did something really strange with the energy system here. Instead of having it be what makes sense, which is you have limited energy that you run out of the more you use complex moves, it's now just a normal beat 'em up, but losing health, which is energy kind of verts you to bend, and you have this limited amount of recharge time where you have to get your alien form back, and if you get hit too much in that time, you die outright, which is kind of the streamlining of things, but it's just worse. You guys got this shit right the first time. How did you screw it up? The first reboot game happened. I've played this game. I can't remember anything that happened in it. I think I got to the final boss and there was like a big tornado thing. And assuming, at least just based on my show knowledge of the reboot, this was probably Weatherhead related. Yeah. I looked through the footage online. Yep. Yeah. Okay. This is a game. I remember more prominently that my friend Tito, who's a moderator on the stream and you can see on the Discord, his mom found it on a bench in New York and mailed it to us over here in Oregon. Yeah. That's how I got a copy to play of it. I don't even have that right now because Tito's moving. So I had to borrow some footage online. I'm just going to have to say, we're going to skip this game and talk about the more interesting one. Power Trip is funky. It's an open world, but I'm not sure that was a good decision overall. It's clear that making this big world took away from resources that could have gone into the rest of the game. And honestly, the overall game feels more like a Lego game. There's a lot of these goofy little minigames and side tangents that are like funny and fun like a Lego game. But it's just like, okay, yep, we're doing that thing. Okay, people are snowed in, gotta clear that up with a heat blast. Okay, gotta run around the city, deliver stuff or whatever is going on in this segment. Gotta chase Hex in this kind of cool platforming segment. But everything is just a little less complex than the prior games filtered things into. Ben's whole unique thing, your reason to play as Ben, is he has a scooter that makes you faster. But once you get Accelerate, who's naturally faster when you're speeding through things, hey, why not just be Accelerate the entire game? We are running into the Diamond Head problem again. The energy system is gone yet again, and it's like treated like a selling feature this time, like, you never have to be Ben again. You can be aliens as long as you want. Or at least that's how it felt. It was slightly hyped up. And I'm like, that's not a good thing, though. That's what was interesting. It's like advertising that a game has less complexity and strategy and being like, yep, we fixed it. Unless you're doing a task or a puzzle or a required thing, there's no reason to not be Accelerate. His combo list is right out the gate and is better than most of the combos, and everyone kind of is generally the same. So there's not really like a big reason to switch between forms other than slightly different attack patterns. Which is a shame, because I feel like if this particular team, Outright Game, tried to make a sequel to Protector of Earth and tried to make it in that style, they could have done well. There's this great cartoony feel to a lot of the attack animations and moves. And like I said, that Lego sense of inspiration and fun and just random little activities is cool. But I don't think they could handle the game they wanted to make. I don't think this dev team was the right choice for their own vision. There's not any more alien diversity than there ever has been prior, other than it's slightly more aliens than Protector of Earth, but the aliens are less interesting than each individual Protector of Earth alien. It has, at times, outright boring and repetitive combat. There's not really a lot of diversity in what you're doing other than here's the task for the alien, here's the task for the area, here's the task for the situation, jump on the platforms, Ben. Once again, it's like a game of telephone where every individual dev is tasked with something by an ignorant 5-year-old to fix something they didn't like or was too hard for them.
I want more aliens!
Okay, I'm just gonna have to take out some of the moves to meet deadlines.
I keep turning back to bed and dying!
Okay, that's kind of the point, but okay, you can just make it so you can't use moves when you're low on energy, and you don't turn back to bed when you run out.
Strolling through aliens takes too long. Combos are too hard.
Alright, I'll see what I can do.
Cartoon Network says that they want the new game to be more like the original games, as like a callback, since that's the theme of Omniverse.
Alright, I'll bring back the energy or something. Throw some classic Ben aliens and stuff in there.
How do we make video games?
Well, I work on the old games, and I put in a Temple Run segment.
You're right.
That's fair.
So we want to make an open world game.
What if we don't have time to put stuff in it?
Meh.
I feel like no game has ever really tried to expand upon Protector of Earth. It sort of reminds me how Sonic 1 is like this rough game where it had a lot of potential, but instead of 2 and 3 coming out and then expand upon it and fixing every problem and almost ironing out it all to a perfect formula, the Ben 10 games are almost like going from Sonic 1 to Zool, then to Gex, and then adding momentum in a sequel to Gex and calling it a callback. And then they just drop ship and change everything to Ukulele. And it's not like Protector of Earth is flawless. Its main problem I have is that the big bosses have some serious wait until you hit them itis, where you're like, okay, I have to wait for the opportunity. Okay, we're moving on. Well, its mini bosses are actually way cooler. If they were faster and had lightning fast attacks and patterns where you're like, oh wow, got it out of them on the feet, but you're still engaging with them and hitting them whenever you get a chance, and you still got to move around them and follow them and track them, that would be a great game series for bosses. But the main ones are just kind of a letdown every time. Like, I get it'd be repetitive just to be a game where it's just fight. But there's not really an endless mode in any of the games. In Protector of Earth, after each zone's boss, there's like a wave-based encounter thing where you're in a little box and gotta fight a ton of enemies. And that's really cool. However, it's just like, okay, we ran out. This is sick as hell, but it's not infinite. And Omniverse 2 had arena mode, which is pretty cool, but its gameplay isn't good enough to justify that, in my opinion. Protector of Earth, I feel like, still has better difficulty, though, in most of the series. If it had, like, a super hard mode, one that makes you go, come the fuck on! And you're like, fuck yeah! When you beat the ass out of this random boss who shows up, that would be awesome. And I think that's still one of the things that's missing is difficulty is great for a kid, but it doesn't reward going back to the game as an adult as much as some of the games could have in an alternate timeline where they expand upon things. Still, as a licensed kids game, it rules. And the modern gaming landscape allows for so much to be added onto all of this. Sadly, I can't make the game of my dreams. I don't have programming skills or actual quality 3D modeling skills. I don't really have the money to hire people to make the game for me. But if people want to see what my pitch and plan for a hypothetical Ben 10 Redux or Ben 10 inspired character are, I do have 25 pages of design docs and character ideas and concept art. And maybe I could someday save enough money to at least commission a playable proof of concept demo or, like, example. I don't know. Oh, trust me, the idea of making my own Ben 10 and all this concept art I've done aren't going to go completely to waste. If you keep up with my comic Neon Dynamo, you'll see what I mean eventually. Anyways, I'm going to go play some more Ben 10 Protector of Earth. Bye.